This story is not my own, but actually from my brother, who passed away in October from COVID. He served in the military for well over 12 years before being discharged for severe medical complications that left him paralyzed until passing away this last October. He told me some wild, crazy stories about the time he served, and I thought it would be appropriate to honor his memory and tell you this crazy, terrifying story of a monster hunt out in the woods of Georgia. What was originally planned to be a survival training course that would last a week in the wilderness with only the bare necessities. A team of 6 were chosen to participate in the training exercise, my brother being one of the first. They were given all the proper supplies and equipment needed to survive. This was also during the late spring, so they had no problems setting up traps, finding animals, surviving by whatever it is they needed to do. About 3 days into the survival training exercise, my brother's teammate was attacked by a large bear, or at least that's what they thought. My brother and the rest of his team confused at first, because to their knowledge, there are no large brown bear or grizzly bear species that inhabit the deep forest of Georgia. But this bear, was able to fully walk and stand up on 2 legs. Not just the way a bear does, where it stands up on 2 short, stubby legs and walks a short distance. This moved and operated just like a man would, in the exact same way. In fact, my brother recalled how chilling it was to actually see this thing in broad daylight, and seeing as how its legs and lower torso were just like a man. Didn't have hocks. They did not look like animal legs, exactly the way a lower man's legs look. The upper body being built like a bodybuilder and having massive biceps and triceps, with a human-like hands full of about 4 to 5 inch claws, and a massive oversized head that was just like that of a grizzly bear. They weren't sure what it was, but this thing was a raging killing machine, killing off 2 of his teammates on that 3rd day. The rest of the 4 were left to scatter and survive, nearly forfeiting the mission. Their pickup point was going to be on day 7 at a given coordination, but since being separated by fear of this thing getting them, they were in complete disarray, and the survival mission had now become a stay-alive mission, or so my brother had told me. Before I continue the story, I want to say that anybody in the military who can relate to any of this would know, when these kinds of things happen, you don't dare tell a soul, and my brother didn't. In fact, he only told me when he was on his deathbed with COVID, through a phone call, actually, telling me some other war horrors that he experienced, and that he knew. He just had an innate feeling he was going to pass. Wanted to make sure that they were secrets that were aired out. This wasn't the only story he shared. There were also secrets and stories about his own life that were more personal, and he was apologizing for some of the things he did that I never even knew about. This is just so you can understand the background, that he was being honest. The man, unfortunately, died about 2 days after he told me all of this. We were pretty close, and I'm still having a very hard time processing that he's now gone. God rest his soul. Anyway, let's continue on with the story, and I'll try and hold it together the best I can while typing this out, even though it might be hard for me. This is probably therapeutic, as it helps me process those emotions and feelings. For the next 4 or 5 days, my brother would spend his time running and hiding as best he could, eating what minimal food he can find, mostly just going hungry, and only drinking what little water he could capture in his canteen. Him and his other teammate, one other of 6, ended up surviving, so ultimately 2 out of 6 survived the mission. The other 4 perished, and are believed to be eaten and devoured, torn apart by whatever this beast was. My brother never used the word werebear, but that's exactly the description that he gave me. It sounded like it was a human-like body, man, just covered in thick hair, like that of a bear, with a massive bear head. Since I'm into cryptids and monsters, I asked him a bunch of questions, since he had seen it multiple times in broad daylight. Never at nighttime, though. but he did emphasize how intelligent this creature was, that it was able to stalk, hunt, and pursue its prey. He even watched as it tore one of his teammates out of an old unused deer stand that one of his teammates had hidden for a few days. This thing had charged at the tree, sniffed, and seemed to instinctually know he was up there, reached up into the tree stand and drug him out, ripping him in half and eating what was left. My brother was lucky enough to conceal himself by a small hole in the ground that was just very lucky to be there, and then he happened to find it. He said outrunning this thing and just keeping out of its reach was like living in a nightmare. It was like a Hollywood movie, a monster movie come to life. He has no idea what it was, what do you even call it. The only two people that actually made it to the coordinates on the set date was him, my brother, and one of his other teammates, like I said. They were picked up, and they told what was going on. They were also given a severe psyche evaluation and put through much testing. From what I gathered from my brother, he was kind of vague on these next details, and I'm still not sure why, but it sounded like he said that they sent in a team to neutralize the threat, and it didn't sound like it was purposeful that that creature happened to run into that team. It was not the original intent to have them survive against this thing, or so that's what I gathered. My brother, at some point during the phone call, began sobbing because he was so terrified to recall this story. I'm not kidding. This is a pretty hardy man. My brother has always been a really tough dude, taking a lot of tough situations in life very well, and never scared easily. He's always kind of been the brave older brother role all throughout my life, so to have him pass, to lose him, is a real tragedy. His story proves, like many other hunting stories, there are some creatures that are going down in the eastern United States, especially it seems like the Bible Belt, full of Bigfoot, dogmen, and whatever these wolf-bear-like creatures are, or as my brother described it, a 10-foot-tall killing machine, built like a linebacker, was easily not any normal animal. This was something beyond the realm of what we call normal. He believes, firmly believes by the way, that this thing was bioengineered. He said it was far too intelligent, far too strategic, like it knew, it plotted, waited, strategized, and used all of its senses fully, just the same way a trained killer would. And he said watching it tear apart his teammates was not only horrifying, but awe-inspiring as well, just due to the sheer intelligence. He doesn't have any first-hand experience with Bigfoot or dogmen, but does believe they exist, based on other stories that he's heard. He believes they're all bioweapons, made by the government or the military. With his untimely passing, we'll never know more details now. I guess sharing this story might be entertainment for you, but for me, it feels like emotional closure. I'm just glad that you're able to get something out of my emotional release. Thank you for being a source to come to, and that I won't be ridiculed or laughed at. I greatly appreciate all that you do. In 2008, I was hunting some buck just outside of Green River in Wyoming. I was having some pretty severe difficulties tracking a buck this day. I could see where it had bedded down the night before, and even tracks, but there was no luck. No traces of it to be found, even when following. Here's what's incredibly unsettling. During my hunt, I found some tracks intermixed between the trail where the buck tracks were. These were kind of like bear tracks, but much larger, and kind of had a human shape. There was clearly a defined arch, and the feet were much more narrow, just like that of a person. Instead of toes, it was the same toe and claw marks as you would see on a bear. I remember thinking, what on earth? It looked like a perfect mix of a huge footprint and a bear track in one, except the tracks were easily 18 and 19 inches in length, incredibly long. I took a picture I'll have to send to you. I was a little bit concerned, thinking they were just distorted tracks of a grizzly bear, since Wyoming does not only have black bears, but grizzly bears as well. you have to be on high alert. Just then, I heard something coming towards me. I look over, and this giant bear is coming hurtling at me. But there's something very wrong. This thing is not running on all fours like a bear would, or how a bear would charge at you. It was running on 2 legs, the same way that an athletic runner would. It was even leaned over just like a person, using its arms going back and forth with its hands straightened down in front of it, as if it were sprinting right at me. I almost crapped my pants right where I stood. My brain could simply not process what it was I was looking at. This creature, this animal was humongous, and it appeared to be half man, half bear. As ridiculous as this sounds, that's clearly what it looked like. And it was charging, barreling at me at insane speeds. I had no choice other than to throw my rifle down and run. I can't even tell you how fast I ran, and after maybe a minute or so, I turned around. It wasn't running after me anymore. I have no idea where it went, or what it was doing. The area in which I was hunting is pretty open, so I have no idea where it could have hid, or where it could have crouched down. Bears are very large animals, and it's very unlike them to just bluff charge you, and then to just disappear all of a sudden. I was frightened, but very confused. I slowly and stealthily made my way back to pick my rifle up at the spot I was. I had probably ran 300 yards. Once I got back to my rifle, I looked around. I didn't see anything. Thinking I was just seeing anything, I was left with a lingering feeling, very ominous, like I was being closely watched, and that I needed to leave. I trusted my gut instinct, and I left out of there quickly. Look, I know my story sounds ridiculous, ludicrous, and not believable, which I hope you can understand. This is why I've been very hesitant to even share my story for a long time. I mean, who's going to believe me? But the more I hear about these half-human, half-bear, or half-human, half-dog animals, the more I feel a little bit more comfortable to share my own personal experiences. I'm not sitting here claiming to know what it is that I saw, or what it is that came in and tried to attack me, but I can thoroughly stand by my experience. It has left me with a little bit of trauma, I'm not going to lie, and definitely teaches me to be humble and to respect what's out there in the wild. Do I believe it was just a grizzly bear? No, I don't. It looked far too different. Its proportions, the way its body was, its size, it was all wrong. If you jump on YouTube and watch how a grizzly bear runs, it's very specific, very distinct. This creature, whatever it was, did not run like that. It was much more human in nature, and it was larger, if that's even believable. I understand that's disturbing, and it might even be hard to swallow, but I believe there's creatures and animals that live out there that we don't always even know about.